Alright, so in this video we're going to have a little bit of fun with if statements and create this very simple game where we simulate the age-old game of how many fingers am I holding up. So it's going to look like this. We'll ask the user how many fingers am I holding up, and they simply have to guess a number between 0 and 5. So if I guess 4, for example, oh, I get it wrong, the number was 0. If I guess 2 on the next one, nope, the number was 5. You get the idea. I'll just do one more guess. Nope, wrong again. Oh well. So this is what we're creating. And as you may notice, there's one fairly crucial new bit of code that we need that we haven't covered yet, and that is random numbers. We haven't seen how we can generate a random number with JavaScript, but I'm going to set that as a bit of a challenge. So if you're feeling confident, then just have a Google and see if you can work out how you create a random number which is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. The information is already there. And as I've said before, the art of coding is really about 80% looking stuff up on Google, so you might as well get used to it early on in the process. Don't worry though, if you can't find the information or can't quite make it work, I'll explain that at the beginning of the process as I go through making up the game. So best of luck, hope it goes well. Alright, did you manage it? I'm going to start by just taking us down to our basic code structure so we can start from scratch. So let's start by looking at that random number generator that I mentioned. What we want is a random number between 0 and 5 to represent the number of fingers that the computer's imaginary hand might be holding up. So let's do a little Google. JavaScript random number 0 to 5. Something like that. Because it's such a general query, we might even be able to have something as specific as between 0 and 5. So here we go, generating random numbers in JavaScript in a specific range. That sounds perfect. Good old Stack Overflow. So how can I generate a random whole number between two specified values in JavaScript? Perfect. Let's have a look. Now that looks like a great answer, but it's using functions and returning, and we haven't seen anything like that yet. So I'm going to ignore that one and see if we can find a simpler example. No, not really. Still got functions here. Okay, now this is looking good. So this code should return a random number between 1 and 10. So let's see if we can break it up and see what's going on. I think the key command here is this math.random. Definitely seems to be generating a random number. So why not take that bit of the code, math.random, with the parentheses, because it's a function, so it's going to need those, and just see what happens when we run it. It looks like it's going to generate some sort of random number. So for now, let's just alert it and see what we get. Right, 0.48. Okay, let's run it again. 0.14. Right. Okay, I think I get the idea. I think what this is doing is generating a random number between 0 and 1. And I could verify that if I wanted by just Googling the math_random function and seeing what information I could get about it. So, if this is generating a random number between 0 and 1, and I want a random number between 0 and 5, I probably just want to take this and multiply it by 5. And we do that in JavaScript using the asterisk or Shift 8 on my keyboard, and then the number that we want to multiply by. So this will create a random number between 0 and 1 and multiply it by 5. So that will give us a bigger random number between 0 and 5. So we've got 2.5, 1.2, 4.1, 3.4. We're getting the idea. This is looking good. The only problem we have so far is that this is a very precise random number, and it's unlikely the user is going to be able to guess it. So what we want to do is get a whole number out of that. And going back to our Stack Overflow answer here, this math.floor function looks like it does exactly that. If I wanted, I could look up that function, but what I'd rather do is just try it out and see what happens. So math.floor, and let's apply that to all of this. And now run it. Oh, I've got an error of some sort. Oh, yep, that's because I need a second bracket at the end there. Okay, so now I've got 1, 0, 4, 0. This is looking good. Okay, so what it's looking like is that this floor function essentially gets rid of the decimal point. So if you've got 3.521, then that will give you 3. And again, I could check that with a quick Google if I wanted to. So this is looking very good. The only issue is, what we're never going to get out of this is the number 5. Because the biggest that we're going to get from our math random times 5 is 5. And even that is extremely unlikely that we get exactly 5. So if we want to get a random number between 0 and 5, we need to change this to times by 6. And then the random number will go between 0 and 6. And then the math floor will take it down to between 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that's as far as I think you need to go on the explanation of how we generate our random number. Now I'm going to give you the opportunity to create the game using code that you are familiar with. Good luck. All right, here we go then. Let's go from the start. And let's start with the HTML so that we know what our page is going to look like. So I'm going to start with a paragraph asking the user, how many fingers am I holding up? So you might want to add a bit more information there just to clarify that essentially you're guessing a random number between 0 and 5. But I'll just leave it at that. Then we're going to have on the next line an input with a type of text and an ID of guess, because this is going to be where the user guesses. And then straight after that, I'll put my button with an ID of check guess, because that's what we're going to do when the button is clicked. And then guess. Let's have it with a capital G. All right, let's have a look. Okay, yep, that looks good to me. So the user's going to tap in there, guess 4, and then click that button to see if they're right. Okay, so now we've done the content, it's time for some logic. So again, we want this logic to happen when the button is pressed. So we're going to start by setting our onClick for our button. So we've got document.getElementById, as we're very used to. The ID is check guess to get the button, and then we want to set onClick to a function that we'll create in curly brackets. And as usual, I'll just check that everything's set up okay. Yeah, brilliant. All right, so let's start by generating our random number. I'm going to create a variable to contain it, and I'll call it random number. And I could create it all in one go, but then we get that sort of slightly confusing code that looks like this. And I don't really want something like that. I want something a little bit clearer. So I'm going to create it step by step, starting off by just doing math.random. So far our random number is anything between 0 and 1. So first off, I want to make it between 0 and 6. So what I do is I take random number and I set it equal to whatever it was before multiplied by 6, as we saw a few moments ago. So now we've got a random number between 0 and 6. We want to make that into a whole number between 0 and 5. And we use the math floor function for that. So now we take random number again and we set it equal to math.floor random number. So if it's 5.3, it will become 5. If it's 0.89, it'll become 0, etc. So now we've got our random number in a format that we want it. So now it's just a matter of checking to see whether the guess is the same as our answer. So let's find out if the guess, so that is document.get element by ID, and the ID is guess, and then we want to get the value of the input. So if that is equal to random number, then we'll alert, well done, you got it, something like that. And if it's not, then we'll alert, nope. And we'll tell the user what it was so that they feel like we're not just lying to them. The number was, and then hopefully you'll remember from a few videos ago when we concatenated our strings or put them together. And we're going to put random number on the end of that. So that will say nope, the number was, and then it will display whatever the random number was. All right, let's take a look. So it should work in its current form. So I'm going to guess 3. Surprisingly enough, I got it wrong. The number was 5. I'm going to keep guessing 3 until I get it right. Nope, the number was 2. Nope, the number was 1. Nope, the number was 4. Nope, the number was 0. Oh, we could be here for a while. So yeah, this is not the best game that anyone's ever made. Gosh, I'm unlucky. Hey, I got there in the end. Brilliant. So I hope you managed to make that more or less by yourself. There's obviously quite a few ways you could take this to make it a bit more interesting. So just to give you a few ideas if you want to experiment, at the moment we're generating a random number each time, so the user only has one guess. But what you could do is generate the random number at the beginning when the page is loaded, and then allow the user to have several guesses just for that random number. And then it would be a challenge of how many guesses it would take to get there. You could even use the greater or less than signs. So that is signs that look like that, greater than, and that less than, to tell the user whether they're too high or too low. That would be a great challenge and make the game quite a bit more interesting as well. But I will leave those challenges to you, and we will move on in the next video to the second most important way of affecting the logic or flow of our program, and that is loops.